Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, Hollywood megastar Viggo Mortensen, who came to fame, of course, in Lord of the Rings. He joins me here in the studio, as does Goldman Sachs WizKid, the man who came up with the term BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, for emerging economies, Jim ONeill. He's here too. And veteran news broadcaster Sandy Gall talks about Afghanistan, which he's visited more than 50 times. But we begin this week with Syria. Negotiations at the United Nations over a resolution aimed at ending the violence in that country seem to have stalled. As residents in the heart of the uprising in Homs begin to refer to their country as a war zone, the Syria peace plan, as proposed by the Arab League and supported by Western states, has had diplomats in deadlock, with the continued threat of a Russian veto at the UN. Well, joining me now is a leading member of the opposition Syrian National Council and the executive director of the Arab Reform Initiative, Bassma Kodmani. Bassma, we say a huge welcome to you. What are you expecting, if anything, to come out of the United Nations in the next few days?
A resolution. We hope a resolution, but we are concerned about the endless efforts to tone down the text. And this is the third draft that we have seen. We are very concerned that the text will end up with ambiguity that is too broad to allow for the real use of what we wanted to see. We do want to see a deadline for the Syrian regime to comply. We want to see the regime complying immediately, actually, with ending the violence, withdrawing security forces, releasing detainees, and allowing for peaceful demonstrations. These are absolute requirements that are in the Arab plan. The UN Security Council should be adopting that plan. We also see that there is a plan for transition. And transition for us cannot start without the departure of Bashar al-Assad, the head of the state. So if that principle is not clear, it is there in the Arab text, it was explicit in the Arab initiative, but we will want to make it completely explicit. And I don't think the Security Council resolution, as we have seen the last draft, makes that clear in any way. We do fear that any toning down of the text and any ambiguity introduced there opens the way for the endless manipulation that the regime has used and been doing for the last 10, 11 months. Everything that is proposed to the regime, it is not a complete no, but it is a total distortion of whatever is required from the regime. So I think there's reason for alarm. We do want to see the issue within the Security Council. We want to see the Security Council say that it is now seized with the Syrian issue, that it will discuss it today and after a few days and set a deadline. But we are very concerned about the ambiguity that is being purposely introduced by particularly the Russians.
Well, I was going to say to you there that when you were talking about what the Arab League, for example, had said and how their draft was much better, you put the blame for what you've just said about the thing being watered down on Russia, or Russia and who?
I think there are reservations from a number of countries on issues of principle. It is not for the Security Council to meddle into domestic affairs of a country, although this has happened in the past. So I think this is now obsolete, this kind of interpretation. But we do find countries that are still continue to say that. China is one of those. Brazil was one of those, probably South Africa and India, who may see that this has some implications and creates precedents for similar interference in their domestic affairs. This is a possibility. But I think the Russian position is the one that is the most difficult to deal with, frankly, because it really comes across as a protection of a regime that is committing crimes. And I think this is where our message to Russia and the message of the people in Syria, but our message as the Syrian National Council has been, you must today acknowledge that this page needs to be turned, that this regime is finished, that is no possibility for it to survive. And anybody from inside the regime is now telling us that, even those who are most afraid. So our message has been, let us acknowledge this, and please let us turn this page together. There is a future for Russia in Syria. We had relations with Russia before the Assad regime, and we will continue, and we want to continue to have relations in the future. But don't make that impossible today.
Do you think over the next few days that the debate will swing towards your point of view and you will get a satisfactory resolution from the United Nations? Or do you think the talking will just go on and on and on?
I think some countries are working in good faith with a lot of patience and using their diplomatic skills to find a compromise formula for the resolution. However, I think a resolution that has no meaning after 11 months of this bloodshed and of the suffering of a people, a resolution that becomes meaningless because it is too ambiguous and too watered down and too soft in the language, I think will be rejected by the Syrian population. I think that it will create a lot of disappointment and frustration among Syrians, and that is a source of new danger. The Syrians get the message so far that they are left on their own, that they should rely on their own forces. What that means is, and unfortunately, it does mean that they will seek to acquire weapons, that they will seek to defend themselves, that they will organize themselves in ways actually on the civilian side, but you cannot avoid in this in this situation. You cannot prevent the militarization of the process of the activists on the ground.
Unfortunately, we're just about to lose the satellite. Hopefully there is progress. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
The Chinese Year of the Dragon has just begun. Often that's seen as a good omen, but will 2012 see the Chinese dragon have a soft landing, or will it too crash and spit fire across the markets? What will it do? My next guest is the chairman of Goldman Sachs Asset Management. He's been described as a rock star in the financial world, thanks to his foresight. Sounds good, that, doesn't it? And his pragmatism and his predictions on global economics. Did he foresee the global financial crisis? Does he think the euro is about to collapse? What will happen in terms of China? Jim ONeill is here right now. Jim, welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
There's so much to talk about, but the mention there of China, do you have your doubts about China's financial future?
Not really. I mean, I constantly try to worry about all the things that could go wrong because I'm so identified with the China thing for a start, and with it's so important. So if something did badly go wrong, the consequences would make some of the issues we all worry about at the moment seem like a walk in the park. We just got the latest data about China last year, and the figures show in dollar terms it's now 7.3 trillion, so twice the size of Germany. Or I used to be fond of saying to people a year ago that China creates the equivalent of another Greece every 3 months. Now it's doing it every 11 weeks.
Really?
Yeah. So last year it increased in 1 year by 1.4 trillion. So half the size of the UK in 1 year.
And what about looking ahead? I mean, looking ahead to the crash and all that happened in 2008 and so on. Are we staring ahead in this year of grace, 2012, to a similar crisis this year, a worse crisis or a milder crisis?
I suspect none of those three. You know, particularly with this news station and its true global reach, I suspect some of your audience probably appreciate the changing nature of the world than many people in the West, in the UK or in the US or large parts of Europe. Many people look at the world from purely their own perspective, and especially from my generation, they just assume that what's going on in their own economies is dominating the world. But it's not true anymore. On a truly global basis, as I just said a minute ago, China is increasingly becoming the main force. And so whilst there are some major challenges and issues, particularly in Europe, it's not affecting the world in anything like the way that many Western commentators say. Even within the heart of Europe, Germany is still showing signs of something close to enjoying a boom. Earlier this week, its latest unemployment figures reported German unemployment at its lowest level for 20 years, which you don't really get much comment about that in the UK or the US.
You coined the phrase, I think, the BRIC countries. Are they all strong at the moment, or is India wavering?
They've all had quite a few of their own issues to deal with. But interestingly, against the background of the sort of mood which you accurately depict in people's minds, people are thinking about all four as having serious problems. There is this talk about a hard landing in China, which I think is increasingly showing signs of not happening, and it'll be something more of a soft landing as such, although it's far too simplified. India had a very troubled second half of last year, particularly when it came to leadership and making decisions, but the very latest data in India has shown actually quite an acceleration. Russia, which is the one I'm frequently given great advice to, you know, when are you going to drop the R in BRIC? Russia just reported its GDP numbers for last year at 4.3%, way ahead of anything that you can expect in the Europe or the US. Obviously helped a bit by oil, but doing well. And Brazil has slowed a lot, but it's also showing signs of picking up again. So these four together are increasingly becoming the dominant force of the world economy.
In a year's time, hopefully we will be together before then, but in a year's time, will we be looking at a Eurozone that is about to no longer exist, or do you think it will survive if the important word, I suppose, in all we're talking about is not so much debt as growth?
I think getting some growth is now key, and you know, things change by the day in terms of the games going on between all the key players, of which there's many. But this week it looks as though the Germans are starting to appreciate that one of the prices for them extracting commitment to even tougher fiscal discipline is that they all need to get together and try and get some more growth going as well. So, you know, that is the next way to think about this issue. To your core question, you know, there's lots of things ahead which could put in more landmines. In particular, the French election is a major source of fresh uncertainty and potential different paths. But assuming that isn't, I think it's very likely that the Eurozone will still exist.
With the same membership, or will Portugal have left it, or Greece left it? Or?
On balance, I suspect by the end of this year, all the current members will still be in, but the two which are struggling the most and will face probably the most ongoing challenges to live with the restrictions of the Eurozone are Greece and Portugal. And if you ask me by 2020, I'm not sure if all the same members will be in, but I do think the Euro area will still survive.
One last thought. Sir Fred Goodwin is now Fred. Yeah. He lost his knighthood because of his actions or lack of actions in the collapse of 2008 and so on and so forth. Do you approve of that decision to take away his knighthood?
I think it's nuts. You know, the precedent it sets for that prestigious honour yourself. You know, if you say something wrong when you're interviewing somebody in the future, you know, they're going to take it away from. I mean, it's a bizarre thing to do, and I think there's something a bit odd about the intellectual elite in Britain at this stage. There's still, here we are over 3 years on from the peak of that crisis, and the desire to find somebody to blame just rolls on and on and on. We've got to move on. Much of the rest of the world is, and just by trying to apportion blame looking backwards, I don't think it's really going to help anybody.
We're delighted you're there to look after these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Sir
for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so to music. The skills needed for performing and composing don't often go hand in hand. Neither do the techniques of classical music and rap. But my next guest mixes all these skills and musical forms and more. Often performing in just a bathrobe and slippers, his shows have comic effect, audience interaction, and outstanding piano playing, at times even with his feet. He's worked with a variety of artists from Bjork to hip-hop acts like Drake, and as well as this, he holds the 2009 world record for the longest piano performance of 27 hours, 3 minutes and 44 seconds. Currently performing his very funny musical show in London, The Unspeakable, it's called. Before I speak to him, to Chilly Gonzales, let's see a clip of the man himself in action. Man in action there, and Chilly is here right now. Not your real name, presumably.
Not my real name, a stage name.
Stage name. Real name?
My real name is Jason Beck, but I'm an entertainer.
But you thought you were an entertainer, and
Sure.
Jason Beck sounds like an accountant or something.
Well, I think Chilly Gonzales it contains just the amount of ridiculousness, but perhaps a bit of intrigue in it. It sounds to me like a comic supervillain, and I always thought of myself on stage as some sort of superpowered being.
Right, a superpowered being. Well, that's a very good basis for a show, isn't it, in fact? And why the bathrobe and the slippers?
I suppose that and playing on an upright piano is also to show people that I'm trying to take this idea of the virtuoso pianist away from the pedestal, away from the idea of being a bit condescending. I think a lot of people, when they go see classical music and jazz, it's hard to find a way in. It's hard to make that music entertaining. And the performers, unfortunately, they're hiding behind, I think, a defensive posture of saying, this is good for you, this is important music. I don't think that works. I think people need to feel engaged in it. So I'm trying to take those old skills of classical music and jazz and that musical knowledge, so lacking in my generation, and bring them into the world of entertainment that we live in, for better or for worse, you know? And part of that is telegraphing to people a character, a persona. And that involves the bathrobe and the slippers and the fact that I am a self-proclaimed musical genius. Right. All of that is to let people know that we are in 2012 and classical music and jazz music and those great art forms, they don't have to die. They can be updated successfully.
And how did you get into breaking Guinness Book of Records? 27 hours, was it?
27 hours, yeah. I think there's a bit of competition missing from music. I came from a world called indie rock. It's a lot of people playing the guitar and, frankly, not being very ambitious. It seems like they're just happy to kind of coast on this idea of being the accidental artist. I don't like this idea. I think we need to be entertainers. I think we need to take it away from this ivory tower. And so I think, the barrier to break a Guinness World Record was just a way of having competition with myself because, frankly, I don't have a lot of people around me I can be in competition with, and I want to be made better. I want challenges. I want to better myself.
And why, after 27 hours, why did you stop? Did you just fall asleep, or you were knackered? Why didn't you go on for another hour?
Because I'd broken the record.
Because you'd broken the record.
I had broken the record.
Did it.
Of course. You do what you have to do to get ahead.
And now someone comes along and they do 28, 29 hours. If they do, you will go for the new record of 30, yeah?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I'm not sure about that.
You're not sure you want to do 30 hours?
I'm not sure I want to start a cycle in which in which all of a sudden I'm having to break my own record. Perhaps I can think of another record to break. Maybe the shortest concert ever. Maybe I just did it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it, yes. Or the shortest text in the Bible and all of those things.
Jesus wept, sure.
And so how much, when you get up there on stage, how much do you want them to be admiring the music, and how much of the time do you want them to be laughing?
Great question, because I think the laughter, Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys always said that his humorous lyrics and certain ridiculous things he would say on stage were just there to get people emotionally open. I think laughter gets the nervous system open to receive the real payload, which is my musical knowledge and the harmony and the melancholy that music can bring. So one is there to open for the other. The laughter is there to let the musical information seep in on a deeper level. The music is more important, and the laughter is there to facilitate it.
And you've written things that have become hits, like in advertising and so on. What was it? Never Stop.
That's right, used in the iPad commercial. That's right, yeah.
That's rewarding too, presumably.
Well, it's very rewarding mostly because...
Financially, I mean.
Financially, of course, absolutely. But most important, I think, over 1 billion people probably heard that piece of music over the year that ad was on. It was in China, it was during the Oscars, the Super Bowl. It's, and that is the whole point, is to have my musical message out there. Whether or not people know it's me is a different story, but it's incredibly satisfying the point where even my parents started to get annoyed. Like, I'm hearing your piece of music again on the TV, I wish it would stop, And of course it never stops.
So how would, if at the end of your life, which hopefully is many, many years away and so on, and they're doing the tombstone, and here lies Chilly Gonzales, comedian, musician, composer, wacky...
No, too long. There's one word that it contains all of that, David. It's entertainer. And
entertainer, that's a good summary.
An entertainer, a great entertainer, is a composer, is a businessman, is a marketing genius. It contains all of that. That's what I love about entertainer. It's the complete package that takes into account being financially ambitious, artistically ambitious, most of all, that you respect the audience enough to really work your ass off your whole life. And they know that you're spending every waking minute trying to make their experience better, so that they're not wasting their time coming to see you in concert.
But can you perform your ass off more than once? Because once you've performed it off, I suppose you can't do it again.
I have an unlimited supply of asses.
Excellent news. That's a great relief for all your fans all around the world. Thank you, Chilly, for being with us
so much,
today.
David.
Chilly Gonzales there. Viggo Mortensen, the one and only, he joins me in a minute after this break, this megastar.